Good morning. What is it? It's Wednesday. Aha. We missed our staff meeting today, so it throws my days all off. July 20th, 2022. Welcome to Triggered. This is the Western Standards live daily show. We have guests, news, and plenty of opinion out of me. I'm Cory Morgan, by the way. And we have another good show coming up for you today. So being live, this is when I like to remind everybody we've got that comment scroll. And I love seeing, hey, we got Marita Cogburn checking in from Kentucky already. I like seeing people checking in. I like seeing people converse and using that, to make the whole point of this being live is having some interactivity, a fluid sort of production and going with the flow of things. So send questions, comments my way, converse with each other, do what you will on there. Again, just keep it civil. We had somebody get a little out of line on the comment section yesterday. I had to block them. I never like doing that. We want to keep the discourse open. You don't have to be nothing but a sweetheart. I mean, hell, I'm not. But we do have to stay reasonable and civil, particularly when it comes to my guests. We get people who come on and, hey, we don't pay for our guests. They're coming on their own accord, and we treat them as guests while we're here, even if we don't agree with them. Either way, good to see you all checking in from all over out there, guys. Ashley, Claudette, Bonnie, out in Coronation. I did some time out there with the oil field on that strip between there and Castor and all that. So, it looks like scorching in Kentucky at about 100 degrees or more. Yeah, a lot of the world is very hot right now. Things are lighting up. It's one of those heat waves. Seems to be hitting all over the place. It's pretty warm up where we are in Alberta, but nothing beyond the pale or out of control. All right, as folks check in and sign in, let's get on with the daily observations and see what's happening out there. This is a big one. It's National Nap Day. So this is the day. Don't let yourself get tired. Don't overwork yourself. Take a breath, lay down, have a nap, recharge. I don't know. I'm not a napper. I can't do that. But hey, those who can, good on you. And once I lay down, I'm down for the count. It might take me a long time to get a sleep. I got to get a full sleep in. None of this 20 minutes and I feel better afterwards. I'm not sure how that works out for other people, but it does for a lot of others. So today is the day where you should be recognizing it, celebrating it, and taking advantage of it. It's National Nap Day. It's also Fortune Cookie Day. This is another one. Again, you want to see what's going on in the future? There's where I mixed. I like opening them. I like seeing the little thing in there. They've gotten a little less prescriptive. They always seem to be just nice, fluffy statements, but all the same. And the cookies usually taste terrible, but they are a tradition when you eat Chinese food, and they sort of cap the meal off in a fun way. Our dogs enjoy eating the fortune cookies. Once I've read the fortune within it, I'd still like, some good tips to come into those rather than all that nice fluffy stuff. Keep the toilet lid down, or is your fly zipped up? Stuff like that. But for now, it is the day you celebrate those fortune cookies. So maybe get out there, get some Chinese food for a change. It's hot all over. Don't want to heat up the kitchen cooking and everything like that. Go get some takeout and enjoy it. Okay, I've got a couple of guests on today. We got some BC content going on. And our BC reporter, our main one, Reid Small. We're going to talk about the NDP leadership race. I mean, their premier has stepped down. Looks much like Alberta. He's still sitting there as premier. Again, much like Alberta. But he's going to be replaced. And it's a long race. It's going all the way to December. So we'll see what's going on with it, who's throwing their hats in, and what's happening with it. As well, let's see. We've got, Penticton business owner, Jason Reynen. And he owns a gym and a mechanical shop out in Penticton. And they've been getting robbed chronically. They've had a lot of problems out there. Crime is high. Again, we're seeing this everywhere. And he started a Facebook group with other business owners, basically going out and getting their property back. They've been going out in person, finding the thieves, or even, they found, I think he basically set up a sting with one of the thieves who broke into his place, who'd stolen something. You can see that the guy was trying to sell it online. He set it up so the guy showed up and then he took his property and said, to hell with you, I'm not paying you, of course, and took it away. Yes, we've got him coming on, and that'll be an interesting discussion. As a guy who's been robbed a couple of times when I had my own business, I can definitely sympathize with that. When we get limited police resources, I don't think it's unfair to, for business owners or homeowners or individuals to start standing up for themselves, protecting their own property, protecting themselves. Yet our RCMP, our police always hate that. I mean, we've seen that from all the way back in the self-defense case with Eddie Maurice, defending his family, and he got put through the police ringer. Or, again, businesses like this where they get upset. The police have their role, but they got limits. Let us take care of ourselves, guys. It'll take some of the pressure off you. I know a vigilante might not be as controlled as a police officer with training, but we just can't allow them to run rampant. We only got so many resources, so let's prepare for it. All right, let's get on to what I'm going to rant about today because it's been interesting news watching this. Energy reality, one of my favorite subjects. And this is not nearly enough people understand energy reality. But right now, energy reality is slapping Europe hard in the face. So, I mean, while the common citizens are taking the brunt of this energy reality check, the decision makers still seem to be blinded by ideology and living in an alternative universe where fossil fuels aren't needed. The excuses are coming in fast and furious. Green energy apologists are blaming the pandemic, supply issues, and of course the war in Ukraine for their energy crisis. The problem is the crisis was pending well before any of these events ever happened. So I'm going to pick on Germany, as they've been the national poster child for green energy. Germany committed an insane amount of money and set impossible emission reduction targets, and then started legislating their existing energy generation systems out of existence, including coal and inexplicably nuclear. They've called this initiative, and I might be mispronouncing it, I'm sure Derek will correct me later, Energy Wind, and it was the biggest political project since the reunification of the country. It's huge, and the initiative has been a catastrophe. The Energy Wind is costing Germany right now about $36 billion a year, and they've been at it for decades as money's poured into renewables like biomass, wind, and solar. They slowed their growth in emissions a bit, but it hasn't even dropped. There's no way Germany's going to come even close to their targets. And Der Spiegel cited a recent estimate. It's going to cost $3.8 trillion for Germany to meet their energy goals. $3.8 trillion. Think about that. That's $3,800 billion. It's not going to happen. They're not going to come up with that money, and they're not going to reach those goals. Now, while they're shutting down their own energy sources, Germany, of course, was filling their void with the increasing dependence on Russian natural gas imports. That way they could claim fantastic numbers on their domestic energy sources while forgetting to mention the impact on their imported sources. It was a shell game. Germany, now, they're desperate. They're firing up their coal generation plants and reopening coal mines as they're facing a winter supply crunch, and they're going to be in a lot of trouble. They still won't consider, though, keeping their remaining 3 nuclear plants operating for fear of angering their Green Party. Ideology is putting citizens at risk for the winter. Germany's not alone. They're just the worst example of the bunch. Pretty much all of Europe is facing an energy crisis, and much of it's due to their focus on unrealistic green dreams while shunning efficient conventional sources of energy. The EU is now proposing to somehow force their 27 member states to reduce natural gas consumption by 15%, starting on August 1st. They're going to enforce it. How? I don't know. It's doubtful that many nations can or will meet those reductions as winter looms. Natural gas in much of Europe is a need, not a luxury. If the EU starts penalizing nations for non-compliance, this could actually lead to a shattering of the EU itself. A 15% reduction in natural gas use, it will economically castrate the EU. Energy-intensive industries are going to be forced to cut production, leading to layoffs and inflation as supply chains for consumer goods are screwed with even more than they've already been. Meanwhile, the citizens, well, they're going to be shivering and rather upset. The crisis looming for Europe this winter is unavoidable. There's little that can be done in the short term, and people are going to suffer dearly. There's no getting around that. In the long term, though, we can fix this issue. The world needs to rein in their ideologically insane leaders. Justin Trudeau, speaking of which, his government's still obsessed with shutting down conventional energy development. He's attacking Canada's oil. New emission caps are being proposed that will harm and chill investment into Canada's already battered and beaten energy sector. Canada should be ramping up production and fast-tracking pipelines along with LNG terminals in order to feed the world because they're desperate for our energy. Instead, we're shutting in some of the most abundant energy reserves on Earth. Meanwhile, we got Joe Biden groveling and begging for more oil from Saudi Arabia while he refuses to entertain new pipelines from Canada or expanding exploration in Alaska. You know who's smiling? Putin. He's smiling as Europe keeps paying a premium for Russian gas. He holds them by the balls, and he increases exports to China and India. The day may come when renewables become a viable alternative to hydrocarbon-based energy, but it's clear that that day is still far away. The mad rush to shut down oil and gas is causing world suffering. Of course, the elites in power don't understand, or they don't care. In Trudeau's case, it's both. He's never had to struggle to pay a utility bill, nor have most of the people in the halls of power around the world. So strap in, kids. The world's in for a rough energy ride as energy reality slams nations, especially winter ones, this year. The protests seen around the world in the last year are going to be nothing compared to those that come. Because when people can't heat their homes or feed their families, nothing else matters. Being chided for their energy use by vacuous leaders such as Justin Trudeau is only going to inflame them. Desperate times are going to lead to desperate measures. We can't pretend we didn't see it coming, guys. The green dreams failed. Well, that's what's got me going today. Now, let's get and check in with our reporter, Amanda Brown, and see what's getting everybody else worked up out there. Hey, Amanda, how you doing?
Good morning. I'm very well, thanks. How are you?
Good. You know, I vented. I feel a little better, a little more relaxed. The vein in my head starting to come down a little bit.
Okay. Well, I'll distract you to help you get over that a bit sooner. But I have to start by saying, aren't we all missing Dave in the studio? I have to say, it's so quiet. It's not sitting here ranting about his chickadees or whoever it was who was pooping on his car.
Yes, he will be back, and people will get the ongoing discourse. But it's been a nice, refreshing change. We're reaching our gender targets now, rotating through the rest of you guys in the newsroom while Dave takes a break there.
Yeah, I'm missing his humorous quips from in the corner of the studio here.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's get stuck in. One of the biggest stories today is inflation in Canada is now up at 8.1%. It pains me to say that's the largest jump Canada's had that's the largest, that's the highest inflation rate we've basically had in 39 years. And those are stats that are coming out of Stats Canada. The press release said that Canadians are paying 54.6% more on gas, which is kind of tough when most Canadians are now spending so much time in their cars as they drive around trying to enjoy the summertime, going out on vacation, and because they want to avoid the airports. The agency also said that accommodation prices are up a whopping 49.7%, which is, of course, making those vacations even more expensive. And there seems to be no end in sight. So that's some news on the website today. Also, Canadians are rising against the federal push for vaccine passports and other health-related mandates. A new Angus Reid poll surveyed Canadians across the country and reported that less than a year ago, Canadians, 70% of them said that they supported vax mandates, and that's actually now down to 25%, which is quite a significant drop. And mask mandates are apparently more palatable, but not a great deal more, but not spectacularly, popular. But around half of most Canadians say that they would accept a mask mandate. Most of the pushback is coming from men, most of them under 55, and they're basically saying that they wouldn't be happy about further health restrictions. 2 out of 3 of those of that demographic basically saying no thanks, no more. Democrat Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, best known to most of us as AOC, and her peer Ilhan Omar both actually faked wearing handcuffs at a pro-abortion rally on Tuesday in front of the US Supreme Court. Both of them pretended to be handcuffed by holding their hands together behind their backs. Who knows why they would want to do that? Answers on a postcard, please, to the Western Standard.
Yeah, well, further with that, I mean, it's not just them hamming up actresses, trying to act like they're being roughed up and roughly arrested at a protest or something, but was the complicit media. That's the other half of that story. Because ABC and NBC both showed optics and visuals of them from the front with their hands behind their backs, so everybody assumes that they're handcuffed. Any of those reporters could very easily have shown, no, they're actually loose hands behind their back, but the media happily played along with that. And that's the other half of this story. So I just like to point that out.
Yes, and we've got a good photograph showing that she's got her hands clasped behind her back, and there's obviously no handcuffs there. A bit later in the protest, she was forgetting that she was pretending to be handcuffed, and AOC raised her hand to punch the air in defiance and then returned her hands to behind her back. The Metropolitan Police Department arrested 17 House Democrats during the protest. Outrageous, radical, rebel rousers that they all are. And lastly, one of the more notable stories on the website this morning is that very sad story about the Calgary lady who was mauled to death by the 2 dogs last month. Those dogs owners now have some serious charges being being raised against them. So they are going to be hauled over the coals, and justifiably so. That was a very disturbing story that we reported on, and there's a good update on the site for anyone who's interested. So upcoming stories, a new poll out comparing support for Charest versus Poilievre is in the works, and that's Jonathan Bradley. And also the poll is shows that support for Conservative versus Liberals is actually growing quite significantly. And I'm halfway through a story that I'm enjoying writing up. Actually, I interviewed Dr. David Vickers yesterday quite extensively, and he's commenting on a study that came out of Qatar earlier in the week, last week, about but basically the strength of natural immunity versus the COVID variants, and how essentially it's overtaking the effectiveness of the vaccines. So look out for that one too. Yeah, that's where we have it today.
Right on. Well, lots on the go as always, and glad you're enjoying some of those writings. I mean, that's some of the half of the fun. I mean, that's why we get good stories. You guys like getting in there, you're actually interested. You're digging in and finding that information and then sharing it. It's dry if it's just plain old newsprint. So it's great stuff, and it's appreciated.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you for the update, Amanda. I'll let you get back to it, and we'll check in with you after the show.
Yep, you're welcome. Thanks very much, Cory.
Great, thanks. It is Amanda Brown from the newsroom, just filling us in on a lot of the stuff they're working on, local, international, national, all those news stories. It's where I remind everybody, as you can see, Nico's got that down at the bottom there. The reason we have these reporters, the reason we can do this, the reason this show is running is because you guys have been subscribing. We don't take tax dollars. As I pointed out, I don't know if ABC and NBC take tax dollars in the States, but it shows that legacy media is terrible. They played along with AOC and her brother marrying friend there as they got arrested, and let them do their little fake handcuffing thing. We don't do that sort of crap, but we answer to you guys, the members. So if you haven't subscribed already, get on there, guys. $10 a month, $99 for a year. And, we're not asking for charity. We don't take tax dollars. This is just selling a product for a service. And hey, get on board, guys. Help support us and let us keep producing like this. All right, let's look at some of this other news story. Pamela Jones-Kennedy saying that poor woman only died because of poor ambulance response. That should be a fact in the charges to dog owners. There's multiple facets to that story. And I've interviewed people on that one, and I've written on that one because it infuriated me because, yes, it took the ambulance 40 minutes to get there. She was just, or a half an hour or something like that. She was just like a 6-minute drive, if you look on Google Maps, from the largest hospital in Alberta. And it took them half an hour to get her there. She died. She was a senior who was ripped to pieces. That's a huge issue that can't be forgotten in this. And our government said, we're going to study it for 4 months and see what we can do about it. Not good enough. They're also saying we're going to put 20 more ambulances on the road. Well, that's 20 more ambulances going to be stuck in hospitals sitting around while the nurses refuse to sign off on their patients. That's the problem. Everybody knows it. The government's terrified of the unions and they won't do anything about it. So putting more ambulances just bungs up the hospitals further. They've got to change the process. And it was reported as well, when that woman was laying there bleeding to death after a dog attack, there were 18 ambulances in Calgary sitting there idling in hospitals because they couldn't sign off and get their patients out. But the other part is, too, I don't know if that would factor in the charges to the dog owners. I guess it could say that perhaps it might not have led to a death otherwise. But those dog owners should be charged as well. If you've got 3 powerful animals that clearly weren't well trained, that were clearly potentially dangerous, they killed a woman, it's your responsibility to make sure that those animals are not loose and harming people. It's yours. It's the person who's responsible and the people. So, I mean, I don't know, I'm not saying these people should go to jail for the rest of their lives, but they should most definitely be charged and convicted and punished because it was just beyond the pale. I mean, again, I talk about dogs and pets all the time. I love them. I own some strong, powerful dogs as well. And absolutely, well, they're well-trained, they're gentle. But if they weren't, there's no way I would be letting them getting loose and around people. It's just wrong, and people need to be held responsible. And this poor woman paid a terrible price, like I said, on 2 levels. On one, because of a broken healthcare system, and on the other level, because of neighbors who were irresponsible, awful dog owners. And what an awful way to go. So, yeah, we'll see what becomes of that story. I'm not going to let that one go. I want to see what happens with our ambulance service. All right, let's bring in our first guest, and that is our BC reporter, Reid Small, and talk about, we've got some big changes. We got an NDP leadership race going on out there in BC. It doesn't seem to be making a lot of news outside of BC, but it's a big deal. You guys are picking a new premier.
Nearly 3 weeks ago, our current premier, John Horgan, announced that he'll be stepping down from his role as the premier. And so the question on British Columbians' minds has been who the new premier is going to be. And last night, the answer to that question became a little bit more clear, although we all expected it to be the case. And that's most likely going to be the Attorney General, David Eby. All the other cabinet ministers that anyone would have expected to have thrown their hat into the ring have confirmed over the last couple of weeks that they won't be running for leadership. A bunch of them have thrown their support behind Eby even before he made the announcement last night. But last night, to the surprise of nobody, he said he will be running for BC NDP leadership. And as of now, he's the only one to be doing so. The timeline set forth is for December 3rd is when the leader will be announced. But of course, if the deadline to enter the race is October 4th. So if no one else has joined by October 4th, then that December announcement may be irrelevant, and David Eby may be the premier of BC as early as November.
If he's acclaimed, I mean, there's some of those differences, I guess, we see with the NDP. They tend to be centralized. They tend to like doing things within. With the Conservatives in Alberta, we've got, I think, 11 people with their names forward. We'll see how many cross the bar. But it would look very weak for Mr. Eby if he just got acclaimed, right? I mean, you want to see a race. I mean, you don't have a mandate if you've just been appointed. So, I mean, they could be entering some dangerous turf if they don't get some other candidates in this.
Right. Well, I mean, he claimed last night that 48 members of the party's 57 person caucus have thrown their support behind him. So that's, a remaining 9 members, unless one of them, decides to throw their hat into the ring. He's going to be the premier. So some other candidates that were expected would have been Jobs Minister Ravi Kahlon, or the Minister of Finance, Selina Robinson. Kahlon was very quick after Horgan's retirement to announce that he wouldn't be running for leadership and that he was going to throw his support behind Eby. Selina Robinson, a few days ago, said she wasn't going to be running for leadership. She hasn't clarified where her support lies yet. But it seems like the writing's on the wall.
So they've put out some of the rules. I don't know how deeply you've gotten into them. You see the cutoff for October. The race is going to be held in December. It's a long period. Is there a high bar, do you know, that's been set? Like in Alberta, that's been part of the problem. It's $175,000 and 1,000 signatures from members all over the province. What does it take to enter the NDP race?
The initial fee is $15,000, and that is for the October 4th deadline. And then basically up until November 13th, there's going to be a series of other fees. And I think it totals $40,000, if I'm not mistaken. So that's going to be the amount, which is not cheap. That's for sure.
No,
but the $15,000 has to be in by October 4th.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a reasonable fee in my eyes. Make sure a person's serious and they aren't just dipping their toe in the water. Yet it kind of speaks a lot. That's why I want to examine this a little, because we got these parallels going on. I mean, Alberta, $175,000 fee, and it still hasn't stopped 11 people from throwing their hats in. Yet in BC, with what sounds to be a reasonable fee, and it's running for premier. I mean, this is a sitting party in power, and so far only one person. It's just quite striking.
Yeah, again, and like I said, he claims 48 of the 57 person caucus is supporting him. Again, it's like you said, it's all very internal. It seems like there was a lot of backdoor stuff happening. This is the surprise to no one that he is the only person in the race right now. And it didn't take long for the BC Liberal caucus to chime in with a scathing press release issued last night. They're criticizing him for all sorts of things. The BC Liberal MLA from representing White Rock, Surrey, Trevor Halford, is saying that as soon as Eby is premier and he's not living in Horgan's shadow, that he's going to revert to his radical activist ways, quoting Trevor Halford there. He does come from, he he used to be an activist. He published a legal manual in 2007 all about how to sue the police effectively. And so he's got 2 young kids. He's 44 years old. He'll be he's really appealing to that sort of younger radical portion of British Columbians, and that's exactly what the BC Liberals are really going after him for being quote too radical.
Okay. So, I just see a commenter, Gail, I'll just answer. She's asking who sets the amount to run for premier, and that's a party thing. That's party by party. In this case, it will be premier because it's the party in power, but it's all internal, whether it's in Alberta or in BC. So, I mean, they could set it at $5 or at 5 million. It's up to them as a party and their committee and whatever their internal structures are. So with the voting system, I mean, let's say another candidate comes in against the EB there. Is it one member, one vote for the NDP, or is it something of a delegate system?
It's one member, one vote, and the deadline to vote to join as an eligible voting member is September 4th, and voting will begin on November 13th.
Okay, yeah, we were talking about that. I mean, I know you're a little younger, but delegate systems used to be so much more popular, and I think they were terribly undemocratic, but boy, they led to great political intrigue. We used to watch those conventions and you'd see all these different teams and they'd be wearing the same t-shirts on the floor, and literally after one vote passed, you'd see the negotiations being made and a cluster would move across and support another one of the candidates. And I think it's a better evolution for everybody, even NDP, to go one member, one vote. But boy, we lose out on a lot of great political intrigue.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's move on to a little more BC stories while I got you. One you just put up recently about the supporters of Tamara Lich being pretty outraged as we got violent offenders walking free among us.
Right. Yeah. There's they've been highlighting on social media a number of different cases, and again, violent offenders going through what you might call the revolving door system is nothing new, especially in BC, but across Canada. One of the cases I highlighted was dealing with an adult man who he had thousands and thousands of photos recovered from his computer of what was described as the most disturbing child pornography described by police. And he's currently a free man, and people are looking at that and they're going, this is crazy. Why is someone like that, walking free right now with a conditional sentence when Tamara Lich is currently in custody? And of course, people will say, well, she was free before, but she, failed to meet the requirements for her bail, and so they'll say that. But again, her supporters are not happy. They're really making a lot of noise and highlighting a lot of interesting cases.
Yeah, well, whether people support her or not, I just wish people would apply a little more common sense to these things. I mean, even if they think, what, she took part in something that's wrong and I want to see her fined or convicted when she gets to court, but you got to apply a little common sense thing. Is she presenting such a threat to society, though, that she has to stay in jail until trial? When again, as you point out and compare, we've got child sex offending perverts who are walking the streets, most definitely providing a heck of a lot more risk to people than she ever would. You don't have to support her to support reasonable application of justice.
Right. And then there's the same day she was denied bail on July 8th, there was that 29-year-old professional swimmer. He was sentenced to 4.5 years for sexual assault that took place. I believe it was in an apartment in Calgary. And he's appealing that, and a judge of the Alberta Court of Appeal has granted him bail right now. And again, his guilt for the crime that he's appealing right now, that he was initially charged with, is yet to be unequivocally determined. But a lot of people are saying, like, look, this is crazy that whether he's innocent or guilty, the crime that he is being charged with, that he's attempting to appeal, is much more heinous than what Tamara Lich is guilty of, if anything.
Yeah, well,
again, this is in their eyes.
Yeah, looking at some of you're always writing a lot of stories and stuff. I think I'm just picking up some stuff from BC that we can relate to everywhere. We'll kind of pivot a bit. There's a Vancouver Park Board. The bike lane battles. Those happen in every city. These municipal cyclists just have their thing. But it sounds like their meeting, as soon as they had a couple people oppose them, they just shut down the meeting and walked out on a proposed bike lane, was it?
Yeah. The board's chair said that he took a recess when things started getting a little bit heated regarding the conversation of bike lanes, and he said he didn't want to focus on bike lanes at that time, but the conversation kept being brought back to it by the third speaker, who's a local Vancouver lawyer. So he took a break, came back, the back and forth continued, decided to take another break. And then upon returning from that break, he said that he had spoken to other commissioners and staff, and that the energy, quote, the energy in the room was making them feel unsafe. And so that for that reason, he was going to adjourn the meeting. And when the third speaker, the local lawyer, tried to vocalize his concern with that, the chair responded by saying, yeah, this is exactly the type of interruption that is perpetuating these feelings among the commissioners and staff. And then he axed the meeting.
Snowflakes, and they're managing the meetings. I mean, come on, was there, I could see it if there was a big screaming protest and people were rushing this chair or something like that. But it sounds to me like it was just some upset people speaking up, as they should be allowed to.
Right. And this lawyer, the concern he was raising was specifically the bike lane in Stanley Park, which has taken over a lane of traffic since the early days of COVID-19. And that has been creating a massive long traffic jams. And he's saying that people who are disabled or have mobility issues, who have no other means of getting to the park, are suffering as a result of this. And that's the angle that he's taking.
Yeah, well, we'll see how that goes. These battles happen, like I said, in every city. Yeah, they're starting to upset some people. Though we're losing a lot of road space for limited use for cyclists. So we'll watch and see how that committee learns how to deal with unsafe environments, those poor souls. So, I guess I'll finish up with this one's kind of interesting. BC nurse was suspended. It sounds like she was creating fake vaccine cards.
Yeah, this was happening in 2021. They didn't specify exactly the date, but because they were calling them vaccine cards, I would imagine it was when you were able to use like a little cardboard slip, which eventually would have been transferred and registered into the card verifier, as you see there. But yeah, she helped 4 people obtain fraudulent COVID-19 vaccine credentials. And she faced a 6-month suspension for that. And that was ruled last week. But the incident, like I said, was when the vaccine card was actually in place in BC.
Yeah, and some people are getting pretty upset. And, just to clarify, because I saw a couple emails in that one too, just the excerpt, all of our stories get an excerpt, and there was a quote, and it's in quotation mark, guys, because somebody said, is this the stand of the Western Standard?
Yes, I saw that, yeah.
It was an excerpt where it says she should be fired, losing her nursing license, be criminally charged with fraud, and fade away into oblivion or jail. That was a quote from somebody within the story, not the stand or the Standard. Look for those quotation marks on the outside, and it really changes the context. But I must just kind of remind folks.
Yeah, and it's almost like anyone that doesn't recognize the quotation marks might not even be worth responding to or acknowledging.
Yeah, I know, but sometimes there's confusion or people read in a hurry, so we'll be a little generous.
Fair enough, I get it.
All right. Before I let you go, is there anything you're working on we can look forward to popping up in the near future here?
Yeah, I'm going to keep following various criminals, violent and non-violent, that are being routinely released with a BC focus, but I'm also going to be covering stories from across Canada as well. And I've also got a story coming out this afternoon of a woman who tragically died of a heart attack. And despite living a stone's throw away from her local hospital, she died because the hospital was closed due to staffing shortages. So I think that ties into a broader issue. So that'll be coming out this afternoon.
Yeah, we're seeing those stories in every province now. We really got to re-examine our system. All right, well, looking forward to that. I'll let you get back to work there, Reid. Thanks for checking in with us today, and we'll talk to you down the road. Thanks
very much, Cory.
Great, thanks. So that is our BC reporter, Reid Small. As you can see, he's got a lot on his plate. He's always coming up with those stories, and a lot of them apply. They're interesting across the country to all of us. It was interesting just to see those differences between the BC party race and the Alberta one. Boy, very, very vast differences, even though both are to replace the sitting premier. It's interesting there. All right, I got to speak to one of our sponsors. And by the way, if you're ever looking to promote your product or service on the Western Standard, reach out to me directly, C. Morgan at westernstandard.news. We can do all sorts of things and have packages to help get your stuff out there to the audience and viewers and promote your business or service. And one of them is the Canadian Shooting Sports Association. That's a service, and it's a great one. It's the name says it all. It's an association of people who enjoy shooting sports, whether it's target shooting, hunting, collecting, any of those things. I mean, if you take part in any of those, you should be a part of this association. It's got resources of every kind, whether it's links to trade shows or events, or just seeing what you may want to be interested in, safe firearm use, all of that sort of stuff. Membership fees are reasonable, and the other part is they're pushing back. They are lobbying on your behalf because we have a government that wants to take away your firearms, wants to take your right and ability to use them away from you, and they'll win. They'll win if we don't push back. So take out a membership with them, guys, after you take out your Western Standard membership. And again, it's well worth it. It's an investment in yourself. Canadian Shooting Sports Association, their website is cssa-cila.org. All right, so yeah, it was interesting hearing from Reid, in closing, that another story in BC with a heart attack and somebody dying near a hospital because of lack of resources. Like, we got to re-examine our whole system. Rachel Notley in Alberta was beaking off yesterday, saying that we need to pour more resources into healthcare. It's lacking money. It's falling apart. My God, since when she was in for 5 years and then followed by Kenny, they have massively increased spending on healthcare. The only part I agree with her is it's falling apart. Now, if you're doing something over and over again and it's not working, stop doing it. The NDP only have one solution to anything. Socialists always only have one solution to anything: steal somebody else's money and throw it at it. All Notley would do is get more union people to bung up the system further. We need to look at the entire system, not just spend more money. We have been spending money. We can't pretend there's been cuts. There haven't been. It's been expanding and the service is getting worse. So if you're putting more money in and the service is getting worse, do something different. Doing something different wouldn't be voting for the NDP, guys. We've been there. It didn't work. Looking at some of the other comments, though, and as we were talking, with that case with the dogs, and I saw some other folks, yeah, it's different. It's a comment from Ashley, which is true. There's pack mentality. This was 3 dogs that came into the yard and attacked. And I mean, dogs are animals, and they're powerful ones. Some are brighter than others, but they're still instinct-driven animals. And when they get rolling, I mean, you watch 3 dogs, my 2 Fosters and my current dog, when they get going in the backyard with a rope and tug of war and get moving, they get hyped up and hyped up and hyped up, and sometimes get into a little fight with each other because they get too wound up and lose a bit of control. You got to try and intervene or whatever. But 3 of them start going, to them it was probably almost a hunting game with that poor old woman. I mean, I don't fault the dogs. I do believe that at this point the dogs have to be put down. I hate that. I hate seeing that. But the 3 of them have gotten into a yard and killed an elderly woman. You just can't let that go. And the owners have to pay a price for this. Absolutely. But there's different standards. And I bet you, I'm just throwing it out, I'm guessing, but I bet you if any of those dogs had come in one by one, this definitely wouldn't have led to that. Like, might not even have led to an attack whatsoever, because they're a little more wound down. But as they get together, as they're running around, they get as it was said, the pack mentality, and they can become dangerous. And again, you own 3 powerful dogs. That means you keep them secure. You don't let them go running loose and do something like that. So, it was an awful, awful situation, and we'll see what comes out of it. Let's look at something a little lighter. This is something I was surprised that Amanda didn't bring up. This is a big news item I saw going through the Twitter scroll. Apparently, Arnold Schwarzenegger deliberately farted in the face of Miriam Margolyes, who's an actor on the set of End of Days. I don't go into the celebrity stuff on here too often, but if it's weird enough and freak show enough, I have to have a look at this one. I guess she was in Harry Potter and a number of other things, and she did an interview and she was complaining about her time working with Schwarzenegger. And there were scenes where I guess he was standing over her. She was supposed to be part of Satan's army or something, and he thought it was funny to fart in her face while he was doing it. I guess to this day, that's was 22 years ago. She's still pretty upset about that and has made it public. either way, take it as a badge of honor. Ms. Margoyles, you guys get paid well for your Hollywood stuff, and you got to have a unique experience with the Terminator. So, suck it up or gag it out. At least we see something different popping through the news scroll on stuff. What else have we got going on here? We hit the AOC. I'm watching some city stuff. Calgary too. They're having a debate now in city council, and this happens in every municipality. Guys, as I said, we got the energy crisis coming. We got inflation. We're going broke. We're up shit creek. We got a lot of problems coming. And what are our leaders doing? We don't pay nearly enough attention to our municipal ones. Guys, these guys charge you a fortune. They affect your economy. They affect your businesses. People don't watch them closely enough. And in Calgary, they're all debating over this vertical farm project that they're thinking of subsidizing with our money. A whole bunch of vertical farming. Hey, you want a vertical farm? Good for you. It's not the role of the city to backstop it. It's not the role of the city to subsidize it. But here they are, and they're wasting precious hours, and they're going to waste probably hundreds of thousands of dollars. And this is above and beyond their $100 million ineffective wasted slush fund through Calgary Economic Development. They're robbing you guys, and they're giving your money to buddies, to woke projects, to things like that, while other businesses are suffering and having a hell of a time trying to get by. You got to knock those ideologues out of office. In the municipal level, they're the worst. Man, you think they're bad in Ottawa, in Edmonton or Victoria or Regina or wherever your politicians are. Your civic ones are the worst. Look at them more closely. Don't let them keep sliding under the radar. They're screwing you blind, guys. So yeah, that's what they're working on in Calgary right now. Here's something that kind of ties into it. So there's a tax claim, that the government's claiming that, oh, look, the carbon tax is getting people out of their cars and saving the world and changing the temperatures and, all those magical things it's supposed to do. Is there anything a tax can't fix? Is there anything a tax can? Either way, I guess it can, get rid of prosperity if that's what your problem is. And let's see, bus ridership, though. So, this should be something that, okay, people got tired of getting gouged with their carbon tax in their cars, so they've decided to move to the bus. Well, no. It still hasn't recovered to the pre-pandemic rates. People aren't getting on the bus. They're still driving their cars. All it is that they're getting poorer for it. They don't want to ride transit. Transit sucks. It's inconvenient. It's not practical for a whole lot of people. And Sylvia's saying, yeah, the rural politicians aren't much better. I know. And we've got to watch our municipal levels on every, our politicians on every level. And even then, how many people can name their county? Reeve. Have they watched? Have they seen? Mine's Suzanne Oil. See, I can name her. There. Now go out there if you live rurally and look up your Reeve, because you got to know who they are, guys. They're representing you. And Suzanne, she hasn't been doing crazy stuff, thankfully, but others have. So yeah, the bus ridership, people aren't doing it. The Taxpayers Federation pointed that out. I'll have Franco on later this week to talk about a few things. We'll talk about that too. And that's happening across the country. And in Calgary, we got a number of reasons for it, but we're down to, there's like 64% of people are riding the transit that did pre-pandemic. So, almost a third still won't get back on those trains, more than a third, because they suck. They're dangerous. They're full of junkies. They smell like piss. They're expensive. Think harder, guys. This carbon tax crap is not doing anything to change our behavior aside from making us more broke. And liberal fart catchers, they've been talking about that with, look, though, it's revenue neutral. We give you the money back. No, they don't. They give some checks to some people. Some get more back than what they put in, but most don't. And it's inefficient. They're pulling money out of one of your pockets, taking a bite out of it, and then handing it back and saying you should thank them. And it's not changing any behavior or making the world better in any sort of way. It's a ridiculous plan, a ridiculous program. And while we're all going broke, it's one of the things that should be dropped right away as inflation is beating the hell out of us. Jet Gorgon saying, what's a Reeve? So yeah, Reeve, think about it. If you live in a rural area, but you're not in a town, it's kind of the equivalent of a mayor for a large area would be the best way to put it. You got regional councillors, and this might vary province by province. I'm not sure, but that's what it is in Alberta. So a county Reeve is sort of the top councillor, and there's different ways they rotate them or select them. But you still vote for those positions for those local councillors and things like that. And you really should pay attention because they do have a direct impact on your life, whether you like it or not. Let's see. Here's the Canadians are divided on treatment on drug addiction. This is something that's getting bigger and bigger. Researchers estimated 24% of Canadians are unsympathetic to drug addicts, and 25% were very sympathetic. So the majority kind of just land in the middle, which is, I guess, kind of normal. People are sympathetic to it, but tired of it. I feel horrible when I see some young person, a curb crawler, walking back and forth with their cardboard sign, and they got that, speed bumps all over them, and they look like death walking. It's because they are, and they probably won't live much longer. I feel for them, but at the same time, I'm also sick of the high crime rates that come from having them in the area, the problems they're causing, the pressures on the healthcare system. So it's not so much blaming them, but we really want to see something addressed. That's all. We want to see a fix to it, but it's a tough, ugly situation. As far as people not sympathetic, just remember, it could be anybody who ends up that way. Anybody. You get addicted. It could be your son. It could be your neighbor. It could be your parents. People get hit. And out of the blue, I talked about that a while back. There was one man who in San Francisco, he is an addiction advocate, I guess you could say, in a lot of ways. He was middle class, doing well, middle-aged, family, the whole works. Had a sports injury, got on painkillers. When he got off the painkillers and the doctors wouldn't prescribe him anymore, he was heavily addicted, started buying them on the street. And it expanded, and he ended up hitting full rock bottom, living as a street person in San Francisco before recovering. So this can happen to anybody. This was a guy who would look like a Norman Rockwell household before one sports injury, and 2 years later, he's on the street living in alleys in San Francisco. So, just keep that in mind. We should allow some sympathy, but we should also try and find some solutions. Let's see here. Jane Price saying, this is a personal choice, no different than smoking. Jane, it's not that easy, and it's not that simple. And getting off of addiction isn't a matter of just quitting. It doesn't. If it worked that way, there wouldn't be as many addicts. It's not like they're happy. It's not like they're having a good old time sleeping in alleys, getting robbed, living in that misery, going through withdrawal all the time, being looked down on by people who are disgusted with them. This is not something people are choosing. Addiction, by its very nature, takes your own common sense away. You aren't thinking right when you're addicted. You aren't in your right mind. You aren't rationing the right way. And, so you can't just, I know, say quit. And I see so many responses. A lot of the responses are people who've never been addicted before. Fair enough. Good for you. I think it's great, of course. But if you have dealt with real withdrawals, if you've dealt with real, getting off of something, and I've been open about that. I'm an alcoholic. I haven't had a drink in years, but I tell you, it was a long journey to get sober. You need help. You need help. You're not going to think the right way and do it by yourself. So, we still have to have personal accountability. I agree with you. It still comes down to the person. It comes down to the addict. But let's try and remember that there are people who are in a different condition. And I get, sometimes people throw things out, and the left and right are both guilty of it. And I watch these shallow discussions on it. When they say, that guy just needs to get a job. That addict is in no condition to get or hold a job. And then there's other ones on the left. They just need housing. Guys, no, a lot of them are far beyond the point of where you're just sticking them in a house. A house isn't their issue. They'll need a home once they get off the addiction. They'll need a job once they get off the addiction. But the priority one is to get them cleaned up. And that's very, very hard. It's difficult. And the success rates, even with treatment for people, particularly with opioid addictions, are terribly low. But they are much better with treatment than the success rates if you didn't treat them at all, if you didn't offer anything to them. So it's a problem. It's huge. It's costing us all. We're seeing it on the streets every day. We just need to have more nuanced discussions about it. Look at the whole thing. Brian saying, 14 years doctors kept him on Oxy, and it was an absolute nightmare. And there's a lot of levels to this. Somebody's saying, God damn the pushers, and that's true. And some of those pushers are doctors. It's not, I don't know so much in Canada, but I've related that on here before when I had to visit a clinic in West Virginia, and I found myself in a clear, true pill-pushing clinic. This doctor refused to even help me with the thorn I had stuck in my arm, which is what I went in for. And he was constantly asking me what my pain levels were because he wanted me to get another prescription. And I was watching these people coming and going while they're in the waiting room, in and out and in and out. Well, he's making his money just writing prescriptions because it's easy work and just keep firing it out there. And you get those addicts and you got permanent customers. And then, of course, if they can't get the prescriptions, it gets worse. So we've got a big problem with a lot of sources, a lot of issues. As Pat's saying, we need more rehab and detox centers. Absolutely. it's just a complicated, ugly problem, but it's not going away for avoiding it either. And it's hitting everywhere. We see it in small towns too. And it's a problem. Here's another one, story, pandemic impact at church. COVID lockdowns sharply cut church attendance, Stats Can said yesterday. Yeah, that's not a real shocker. You know, I live with a church just down the road from me, actually, a little one. It's kind of a neat, it's a real cool scenic thing. If people have been to Pritis, they've seen that before, and it's a ways away from me down there. And it's been kind of neat. It's one of those tiny churches. It's been there over 100 years, and they had a congregation of a dozen or 15 people, maybe mostly elderly, and it's never come back. I mean, the church is still there. It's still maintained. But I guess, you know, since they found new places to go or different things, they just haven't found the basis to reopen and carry on with it anymore. So it's unfortunate, and I imagine that's happening, as it's saying by this study, with a heck of a lot more churches. I mean, people who moved on to praying at home or participating in other practices, they're just kind of staying there. We're seeing that with the workplace to a degree as well. Myself, I mean, I'm not a man of faith on any level. I don't go to anything. You know, I'll go to somebody's church if they want me to for a wedding or something. But either way, churches serve a role. I don't have a big beef with them. I mean, a lot of people see them as an important social spot. It's a place they gather. It's a place where they meet their neighbors. It's something they look forward to. And it's sad to see that disappearing for a lot of people who found those gatherings and those things important. The levels and consequences of the lockdowns in this last couple of years, we're going to be studying this for decades. And I won't move from saying we overreacted. We caused way more damage than good, way more damage. And still we're seeing the discussions. We're seeing the people. We're seeing them screaming them from the rooftops. The seventh wave is coming, lockdown. The seventh wave is coming, mask up. The seventh wave is coming, shut down businesses and sports. No. How many times we got to punch ourselves in the balls over this? Obviously it didn't work. It hasn't gone away, but what have we got? We got rampant inflation. We got world disorder. We got an addiction epidemic going on. People out of business, people stressed. Churches, as I said, with people not attending anymore. And you guys want to keep doing that? You want to keep shutting things down, keep putting a hammer to the economy and to people's life cycles and styles? Stop it. Stop it. We can't legislate our way out of a pandemic. We tried. It failed dismally and at a terrible, terrible cost. And how circular have we got to get with these things? It just never quite stops. Still waiting for my guest here. I hope he pops in. Either way, there's always lots of things to talk about. So let's see. Paradoxy saying, you know, pleased to see the Standard article showing the lower desire for mandates, at least. Yeah, it's coming down. It's coming down. Still, a lot of people want to see them. And, you know, hopefully it's just as we keep learning, it doesn't matter what you think. Let's look at it. That was always their term before. Follow the science. Follow the science. Well, let's start doing it. We got the science. It's been 2.5 years since this crap started. And we're finding out what doesn't work. Lockdowns are one of them. It doesn't stop it, and it causes terrible damage. That's a lot of what we need. Again, I know, maybe I'm living in dreamland as bad as those people who think we should have green energy sources replacing hydrocarbons overnight. But we need government to actually, before they start policies, do a cost benefit. Look at it. Look at the costs, because it was hard enough to show any benefits of the lockdowns, but they conveniently always overlooked the costs of it, the social costs, the economic costs, the repercussions. Like I said, so they use this as a convenient excuse for pretty much everything, for employment shortages, for product shortages, for inflation. Oh, it's just supply chains. It's just supply chains. It's just supply chains. Well, why are the supply chains screwed up? It's because you assholes locked the world down. That's why they didn't just suddenly blow up. You guys went in and messed with the economy. You got in there and you kicked it, and it's not recovered. And it's going to take a while. It's a whiplash effect. And still we have ding-dongs who want to lock the world down every time their neighbor gets the sniffles. If you're that scared, lock yourself up. Go to an island, build a grass hut, and live on it. But leave us the hell alone. We're done with this. It's over. It has to be over. And look at Pamela commenters, saying, Pamela and Ashley saying, well, yeah, they were talking about glory holes. This is how absurd they were getting. Or, yeah, the signs, keep a 2-meter distance. Did that make a difference anywhere, ever, really? The little arrows on the grocery stores, as Ashley points out? No, it was virtue signaling, making it look like they're doing something when they really aren't. God, just doesn't stop. Speaking of entitlement, here's a BC woman who won a $1,200 payout from Air Canada because her baggage was delayed 2 days. I mean, I guess credit due. How the hell did you pull that off? Like, I used to work in the States a lot, and I'd fly around all the time. And they would chronically lose my luggage. Part of it was because I had this cheap boss who would basically get me a flight to, somewhere like Pittsburgh, and he would have me, just pick the cheapest one on Expedia, and I'd end up with like 12 connections to get there. I've pretty much seen every little airport in all of North America over the years I worked for him flying around. But of course, when you have that many connections, chances are they're going to bugger up and lose your luggage at one point or another. Most often, I would see by the stamps on my luggage tags when I would finally get it delivered to my hotel by courier a couple of days later, it would go to North Carolina for some reason. I don't know, some sort of hub for luggage, I guess. But I never got anything aside from one of those little blue packs, with a toothbrush and some other stuff and an apology from the airline saying, we'll get it as soon as we can. She got $1,200 for 2 days, 2 days, and she got her back. They offered her $500 even to begin with, but no, she went further and went to a tribunal, and they ruled that she's going to get $1,200 because they lost her luggage for 2 days. Man, I was missing out. Like I said, if I could make money like that over that, because it must have been half a dozen times it was lost, that's a good chunk of cash. I could have bought, like a side vehicle with all I'd win out of that. I don't know about these tribunals and stuff, but they punish and they win. What's that Marita Cogburn saying? They have to pay you for your inconvenience, and that's fair enough. But I mean, $1,200 for 2 days? That's pretty healthy. And hey, I'm typically not sympathetic to Air Canada. I am not a fan of that airline in any way. Never have been. But that's what she's doing. So, okay, here's another one. This is Alberta First Nation wants to move ahead with its own police force. So this is the Siksika Nation. They're just east of Calgary. They used to be known as the Blackfoot Reserve, when I was younger, and we get over there. It's a sizable one, a prairie one. And they want to get their own police force. They've got one in Gleason. It's an RCMP detachment. That's the town that kind of borders on the reserve. It's half in, half out of it. And they saying Ottawa's got a roadblock preventing the creation of a new force right now. So I'm not sure what's going on, but they're having difficulties with policing, of course, and they want more direct stuff. Like, this is where I think, let them have one. Now, some people might not know some of the nuance with that reserve and a lot of reserves in general. I know that reserve well. Again, I traveled a lot. I worked in the oil field a lot. I spent time on these. The Blackfoot Reserve had a police force of their own, actually, in the 90s. It lasted about 8 or 9 years. Unfortunately, that police force had a whole lot of problems, big problems, corruption. Citizens were more afraid of their tribal police than they were of the criminals by the time that force was finished with. And that's basically why the contract was not renewed and it went away. But just because it was done wrong the first time doesn't mean it can't be done right later. Part of the problem then is it was the early 90s. That's when the big self-government trend, it was almost, a fad. Let's just keep throwing complete self-government at reserves. Kind of a good idea, well-meaning, but some of them, the bottom line is if your reserve had corrupt leadership, all you're doing is empowering the gangsters. And you still have to have some checks and balances and controls for the sake of the citizens on there. So I think things have gotten better. And, reserves are unique places to police on. I mean, you've got all sorts of different, and rural in general, but, unique families, unique needs, unique challenges, things that are different than you would deal with off reserve in any other area. Plus, a lot of mistrust between police and citizens and a lot of tension. And I think having a reserve force, if it's well organized and not corrupt, of course, and that's very possible to do that with a lot of local citizens and ones who know, what's going on out there, I think it would do a lot of good for the reserve. I hope the federal government relents and lets these guys set up their own. The Tsuut'ina Reserve next to Calgary has their own police force, and it seems to be doing quite fine. I mean, it doesn't solve every problem, but having a local force, you have a much more trusted police force going on in there. I mean, for the same reason, I'd like to see a provincial force for all of Alberta in general. So I say power to you guys. I hope that you can get your own force in the Siksika Nation, and I hope it goes really well. Because again, there's a lot of social discord on the First Nations and a lot of challenges and a lot of crime. So the policing is more of an acute need for them than it is for others. So I mean, that's just kind of a good news, bad news. I think there's a good move, and quite often when a First Nation wants something, Ottawa will relent. So I think they're going to get one, and let's hope they do it really well. Somebody mentioned Hobima, and Yeah, that's another one. That's the Samson Louisville Reserve, or used to be known as. Wow, I think now it's got some long First Nations name in Cree or something that I can't pronounce. I'm sorry, guys. I can only keep up so much over the years. That one is in Hobima, has had some terrible crime over the years and gang issues. I don't think they have their own police force, but it's another challenged reserve in Alberta. We'll see if some of these things help, though. Get some stability, make people more comfortable. Getting across the country. The same story I'm seeing everywhere else. I like going on about it. I get worked up and annoyed with people again, speaking of personal responsibility and with pets. Not just in the ones that can get vicious and dangerous, as we saw in the terrible Calgary case, but just keeping your pets. So, all of these COVID pets are coming back in. All these people who bought themselves comfort animals while they were on lockdown or working from home, and now found, this is inconvenient. Now I'm going to work and I still have to walk this thing. I still have to feed it. I get vet bills. Screw it. I'll throw it into rescue. That's animal abuse is what it is. The animal came in, it settled in, it trusted you, it made a home, it thought it had a family. And as soon as it was impractical, you took your irresponsible, lazy ass and you dumped it into a shelter. So this poor thing sitting in a cage and it doesn't know what the hell it did wrong. What it did wrong got adopted by the wrong irresponsible prick. Either way, it's happening everywhere, guys. And if you can foster animals, if you can adopt them, get out there. There's such a backlog. This is Regina. They've had, not a huge city, but they've had 200 more animals come through their doors just in the first few months than they typically do in any other year. People are abandoning these poor animals all over the place, and these things need homes. Check out, I've had people on from Positive Match, and I've talked to others, some really good rescue organizations, ARCs, or even your SPCA, and look at fostering, look at owning an animal. And of course, if you're not in a position to own an animal, though, don't get one. Don't. That's fine. It's allowed. I would rather, if it's not your thing, just don't. That's why these things are in here in the first place. Make your decision carefully, too, when the time comes. And Sylvia's saying it's better than dumping the animal on a road in a rural area. Yeah, it is. It's less bad to dump your animal back into a shelter than to dump it on a road in a rural area. But it's still bad. And just think harder before you get your pets. It should be a life commitment to life commitment to the animal to the end, between you and the animal. It should be a family member. And yeah, it's not easy. There's a lot of days I don't want to go up and pick up that gross fly-ridden crap in the back. I don't like it when they've eaten another one of my remote controls, the fur that gets all over my suit. But I put up with that because I love the animals. And if you don't like all that, then don't get one. But, either way, there's a real crisis going on with them right now. So if it's time, you're thinking of it. Another thing is get some of the older ones. These are the ones that are suffering the most. They really are. They're the hardest ones to adopt out. These are the ones that, in my view, have been emotionally traumatized. They're older. It means they've probably been in a household for a fair amount of time. And then for whatever reason, it ended up in shelter. And it's not always somebody being bad. Sometimes it was somebody who got physically incapacitated. They got sick or they got injured, or just a family change that came that was beyond their control. I don't want to crap on everybody who surrendered an animal. There could be some very realistic reasons why it happens, but they've got a lot of them out there, so let's help them. They can't help themselves. They trusted us, and we've got to do it. Wendy pointing out, sad when people vacate their homes and the animals are left there. Yeah, I read a horrible story about a dog that was left in one of those crates in a house in an apartment that was vacated, and when they'd found it, it was dead. It had starved to death, and it had actually tried eating its own paws. These are people I want to see in jail. Speaking of people who should be in jail, here's a group claiming responsibility after tires of more than 30 SUVs were deflated in Kitchener, Ontario. This group's probably 2 or 3 cellar-dwelling assholes, the usual Antifa types and so on, I would imagine. But they're saving the environment. They're saying, they've been leaving notes saying, "Your gas guzzler kills." And they went out in the night and they let the air out of people's tires in their SUVs. And of course, not only does it inconvenience the owner of the SUV, you can damage the tires, of course. You're damaging property. You're messing with somebody's property. It could be dangerous if a person leaves in a hurry and they're not attentive and they whip out into the street on flat tires. These guys should be charged and heavily charged. And I tell you what, it seems unfortunately my guest isn't showing up. It's just the challenges of live sometimes. But his group, like I said, was pushing back his businesses against the crime they've been dealing with and things like that. And I tell you what, if I see somebody out meddling with the tires in front of my house, I'm not going to call the police. They take 40 minutes in my area to respond anyways. I don't think I'm going to shoot them or anything, but I'm not going to respond nicely. I'm not going to just ask them to leave. I'm going to get them out of there and make sure they understand that it really wasn't a good idea to mess with my property. And I think more people have to do that. It's we don't need to tie up our court systems, guys. As citizens, we can take care of ourselves. Don't forget, juries, they always tend to favor the citizen. Let's see, another little note or tip for folks. Always keeping cash on hand. Experts say after a massive Rogers outage, you know, everybody remembers Rogers went down a little while ago. And, you know, it crippled the country. I mean, we need more competition. We need a lot of things. But either way, it's just a good tip. You should keep, listen to other people talk, you know, keep a $100 bill stuffed somewhere in your glove box or your vehicle, buried deeply so the thieves don't get it, or somewhere in your home or just in your wallet, because you just never know. Or even having a few 20s, because, you know, it might not be somewhere to break it. But I mean, folks on that Friday, I think it was, with cash in their pockets had a hell of a lot more, you know, better day than those who were reliant on debit. So, yeah, stuff coming along on there. All right. Well, I'm going to move it along here, guys. We'll probably call it a day. We missed a guest, but I've covered a lot of the news stories. We've talked about a lot of stuff. So come in tomorrow, guys, and let me see what we've got going on. We've got Amariza Gunnick, and we're going to be talking about the daycare program going on. And we're going to speak to Arthur Green, because the big deadline is coming up for the leadership for the UCP. They've got till 5 o'clock tonight to get their signatures in, and a large part of the deposit they have to. So I got a feeling we'll have a much different picture of exactly who's running in this race tomorrow than we do today. So we're going to talk to Arthur about that. He's the Western Standard Bureau reporter up in the legislature in Edmonton. And of course, I'll be ranting about something new and talking about news items as well. So thanks for tuning in today, guys. We'll see you again tomorrow at 11:30 a.m. sharp.